core example of that, the one where this all begun, was Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. I mean, this was the cultural moment, I think. Like, many gamers were aware, but this is where it caught critical mass. This is when the normie, the more casual of gamers, became aware of what's going on a little bit more than they were before. And everyone collectively decided to not buy Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. And now we have some numbers into how badly that actually turned out, which is far, far worse than probably most anticipated to begin with. It was so bad that it was actually highlighted during Warner's earnings call as of yesterday, where we learned the number. That game lost a whopping $200 million. This is not some speculation. This is not something that we have figured out by crunching the numbers. No, this is straight from Warner, who admits this in an earnings call, that the game lost them $200 million. And it's basically taking down the entire gaming division, or not taking it down per se, but it is an albatross on the entire gaming division.
It's a kick to the kneecap after the year they had with Barbie, and the first part of the year they had with Dune and Wonka and Kong. I mean, yeah, like movie-wise, they're doing great. And Hogwarts last year did very well for them. But
and Hogwarts was a controversy that turned on the people who are trying to make hay of it too.
Exactly. It's funny how those two work, because last year you had a game in Hogwarts Legacy that offended the brown shirts, which I like to call them, the modern day brown shirts. They were up in arms over that game. And it was so successful. It sold like hotcakes. Whereas this game right here, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, they did everything to make it a massive hit. It was diverse, it had inclusion, it had racial politics, it had Sweet Baby Inc. making sure that it had all of those things. It even had an LGBTQIAP plus Joker, as we see in the picture here. What more could you want? And still, the gamers stubbornly refused to buy it. I think that's fantastic. Well, your thoughts on the numbers here? 200 million.
200 million is a staggering loss. These games, like I said, are very expensive to make. Their marketing budgets are almost as much as their development budget. So the game, I'm guessing, was 100 to 120 million to make and 80 million in marketing. This is just nuts, and you can't ignore a loss like this. This hits the bottom line pretty darn hard, and I think it's going to be a sort of like a signal flare for the rest of the industry. And they're probably wondering what to do. And the executives really are money focused. They're just listening to what their dev teams want to do for the most part, and targeting markets and genres that they think will be profitable. But the dev teams, which are infested with woke, are telling them, we have to get more wokeness in to sell more. And they've been told this for a while now. And I think it's just, this is where the rubber hits the road, and it's just not working. So I think that this is going to change some things. Now, you mentioned Sweet Baby Inc. They have different amounts of involvement in different games. Some games they just consult. Some games are just there to be a checkbox so that they can get on their ESG forums and reporting. But they were senior writers here. They led the writing on Suicide Squad, and the way that the DC characters were treated here in their biographies and in their death, and especially Batman's death scene, this was so disrespectful to the original IP, so disrespectful to the characters. It was almost a celebration of the destruction of the IP, and this sat very, very poorly with gamers. That and the monetization, right? They wanted to make this an open world game. They wanted, a live service game. They wanted to monetize as a live service game, and gamers are fed up with that too. And you're going to see, unfortunately, a lot more pressure on live service monetization because of the stuff we talked about with game passes and not making money and how they're going to make up for the cash fall there. But yeah, so there were two major reasons. One was the live service aspect. The other is SBI had a very direct involvement in the writing, and it showed in the very poor writing and poor respect for the IP. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so that's quite a loss. Paul, what's your thoughts on that number? Are you
Well,
surprised
couple
that
things.
they lost that much?
I want to correct the historical record. I would suggest that the beginning of this was Star Wars Battlefront 2 and loot boxes.
Oh yeah,
that's the beginning, where the audience rose up and actually got them to stop using the loot boxes, or at least altering them in such a way as to not make it as pernicious. But the game never recovered. And then, subsequently, we did go through the Anita Sarkeesian dark period. And now we're here. And everything that you're seeing now is kind of the tail end of that entire mess. Executives, network executives or studio executives, if I can tell you that they have little to no interest often in just their television shows, they have no idea what the programmers are talking about when it comes to the game divisions. So they just tend to hope that they put enough cash into the kitty, and these people that they don't understand at all and kind of scare them will just shut up and make the game and make the money. So this game here really seemed like a complete hands-off, abandon any kind of sense of executive oversight to come up with this. So how could Warner allow a game to come out that beat up their main characters? I mean, it wasn't just Batman. It was, Wonder Woman came out okay.
So I don't know what changed.
I don't know what they were thinking.
Maybe you can tell me. But back there was a time where Blizzard was making a Superman game, right? Way back. And I don't think I don't know if they ever released it. It was under Chaos Studios, their original name. But I remember that we had Superman in it, and Superman had a kick move, and we got a note from DC Comics saying Superman doesn't kick, and we had to remove that. And every decision
Zack Snyder movies.
Well, I guess times change, and then he's putting on his boots now for kicking. But you had to run everything by DC, and it was very strict. And I think that sort of adherence to canon, adherence to consistency in the character, that seems to be gone, and no one's running anything by these departments anymore, or these departments they just don't care because the comics are so woke infested at this point.
I actually might know the answer to that, because this game coming about corresponds directly with the same time they were trying to go with the DCU. So this would be right around this, because this was announced in 2020, August.
You're right, Tom. Of course. Yeah.
Go ahead and elaborate, Andre, if you want to. Sorry.
Well, if you want to go for it, I can do the. You want to take it, or I can?
Well, Paul was about to say something. You can pick it up.
The whole business of someone coming in and saying Superman doesn't kick. I have found over time that the dumbest suggestions come when there isn't good, strong leadership at the top, and you get the middling gang the middling C-level or lower level people who are trying to exert some kind of influence on their own work. They come up with the dumbest shit. So we were working with Apple when Steve Jobs was gone, and I cannot tell you the number of times that we got notes that the Apple logo was not the right color in the products that we were delivering. People were just going crazy over the tiniest things. Now, I'm not saying that isn't the case with what you went through, Grums, or went with that.
That was clarified. That was before I arrived at Blizzard, when they were chaos.
Right. But I'm just saying that I find that when people are concentrating in minutiae, it means that they don't have a good creative lead up at the top, and they start asking for stupid notes.
That makes
You
sense.
stop offering stupid notes.
Yeah. As for what Tom was referring to, this is something that that we have covered before, and Tom's sources, remember, at that time were absolutely unparalleled, and we had like the best track record when it came to DC coverage because of that. And it was later confirmed, all of it. That's when we were like 6 months ahead of the industry trades, but 100% accuracy, more or less. As for when this game was in development and why Warner would have approved it, this would have been during the regime of Ann Sarnoff.
Sarnoff, yes.
Yes, Ann Sarnoff, she was the head of Warner at the time.
That makes sense.
Zaslav, he fired her when he came in. But what she did, she was the one that wanted to bring in the DCU. And this is what The Flash originally, pre-reshoots, was supposed to do. Basically, it was supposed to wipe out Henry Cavill's Superman from existence, permanently replace him with Supergirl, as we saw introduced in that movie, and also wipe out Batman so that he would be lost somewhere in the flow of time. And then replacing Batman, now lost, would be Batgirl. You know, that movie which Zaslav cancelled while it was being filmed, because the whole strategy for Ann Sarnoff was to permanently get rid of Batman and Superman and have a new DC trinity consist of the much safer, more diverse and inclusive Batgirl, Wonder Woman, and Supergirl as the new heads of DC on film, which was going to be so diverse and so inclusive that Zaslav shut it down instantly the moment he came in. This game would have been developed during that time, so Ann Sarnoff would have had no problem with killing off Batman in the game because she was losing him in the flow of time on film, because he's a problematic white male. And I'm not even joking. I mean, it fits perfectly with why this would have been released. This is a Sarnoff production. Well, not directly, it's a Sweet Babying production, but it could happen because Ann Sarnoff gave it the go-ahead. She was perfectly okay with dissing Batman this way.
Yeah, and this is not that long after the Harley Quinn movie, too. Sorry, go ahead, Grums.
Yeah.
I think that's an important point, is that this isn't, this has to be DC approved, right?
Yeah, it does.
And all this stuff has to be approved by the IP holder, which was, I think, the original point with, when we were talking about Superman kicking and all that stuff. So this strategy, of trying to take, what is a male-dominated IP, and we've seen this with Star Wars, and they thought that they could broaden the appeal if they reached out to other demographics besides the predominantly male one. It's not working, and we have to realize you can be a tremendously successful IP if you cater to one demographic and you create something specifically for them and it catches fire. Look at original Star Wars. That nothing held that back from being a phenomenal success, even though it was a male-oriented phenomenon. It's okay to do that. I don't know why we have to go and suddenly say, and not only is it not okay to do that anymore, but you have to destroy the male demographic. They can't watch anymore. They say, we don't want you to watch. Right? They literally come out and say this. It's like, you're not our audience anymore. We've got a new audience. This is corporate suicide, and I don't understand how it's survived so long, even now after the funding for these sort of initiatives have dried up. What's keeping this going
at this point?
Well, two things. I would say, if you're genuinely asking, I would say two things. One are the people funding the whole thing. Same people who are funding all of the college protest and everything that's going on. That's one side. The other are now the fully indoctrinated activists who, for them, this is their life. This is what they do. This is their cultish cause, which they support even though they don't fully understand it. Because if they did, they would never support it. So they're just part of the cool club, like any cult member feels like. So it's like those two things: it's nefarious people on top and the foot soldiers. So that's what keeps it going. But the moment that this is going to end is when the backing for it stops. And that hasn't stopped yet. But of course, it's facing some level of challenge, because I do not think that the people funding all this, that they anticipated that these things would fail as badly as they did. As I said in our previous video, we have a couple more in development, but the previous one to be released, when I spoke about the Disney shareholder meeting, where it appears that some of the big institutional shareholders, who are all about stakeholder capitalism, they're all about corporate wokeness, but now the price to pay appears to be a little bit steep for them. And then you might see the tune change just a tiny little bit. That's kind of like what has to change. It's the people paying the bills that need to stop it one way or the other.
The people are never going to admit that they're wrong. It's going to take a long while to get this out of the system.
It's going to take as long time as it starts. It's going to take 15, 20 years.
I don't think it's going to take that long. I
hope not.
So the funding for games for these types of DEI initiatives has dried up, and that's why you're seeing Xbox in so much trouble. That's why you're seeing so many layoffs in the industry. And I can tell you that the layoffs are targeting the activists, because the activists are the least productive in your company and cause the most headaches for you. And executives are, and this is what I'm being told, executives are waking up to this fact. And while they can't go out and deliberately target activists, they are focusing on productivity. And there is a strong correlation between productivity and activism. These activists like to work from home. They don't want to come back to the office. They want to have a lot of meetings where they get to spout their propaganda instead of doing real work. And so they are being disproportionately affected by the layoffs. And I think that you have to do a purge. There is no other way. You're right, because even if the executives get it, they can be held hostage by a company full of activists who don't want to do anything else and who will try to drag you down if you ever overtly say that you don't think this is a good idea anymore. So I think that the only way to solve it is a purge, and that is happening in games right now. We got 30,000 people laid off in AAA. And because the money isn't there anymore, and there needs to be more. I think that AAA teams are very bloated for a number of reasons, and definitely filled with these types of people, and they have to go before things change, because they will drag your product down.
There's an interesting video by, I think, the guy who created Fallout New Vegas, and he was trying to create a new game under the new modern auspices, and he was just talking about how these programs were insane. And he said, finally he just rolled up his sleeves and programmed something himself in 40 minutes that a lead programmer said would take 4 weeks.
That's a real problem in not just games but tech. There has been a vast wave of unproductivity, right? And some people in Silicon Valley and AI, there was one, I think, post that went viral where the guy said he worked for 3 hours in 3 months for a financial tech company. And this wasn't even by choice. He was trying to get more work, but nobody wanted to go along with that. So because if he did more work, he would outshine the others. So there was actually collective pressure to do less and to pad your estimates.
Wow.
And yeah, I wish I had that post right now. This came out about 6 months ago. It was talking about the AI industry and the finance industry. And this coincides with COVID times, work from home and everything else where you can get away with this. And so in software development and in games, you have a prevailing software methodology called Agile and Scrum, and where you have to have these daily meetings and come up with your daily projections. And there is peer pressure to pad them, the time estimates, so that nobody has to work. And it's gotten to ridiculous lengths. And this is why AAA teams, I suspect, are taking are vastly unproductive with 600 people versus smaller teams of 30 to 60 people like Arrowhead, which are shooting out bangers, right?
Right.
So I was shocked to learn that this was happening in the tech industry. I definitely saw some of it in games, and this goes along with quiet quitting and all these other commie philosophies. and what do we get for it? Once you have the commie philosophy, nobody works, right? And this was propped up by cheap money, and it's not going to hold water much longer. But yeah, I was shocked to learn that, and
Well,
I've seen it.
Google tossed 50 protesters.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. I think you're going to see more of that. But there is a rash of this sort of unproductivity out there, and that needs to be fixed too.
Yeah, good point. Good point indeed.
I was lucky. I had a very productive programming team. I was extremely lucky.
Yeah, because to me that kind of like sounded.
Pardon me?
Because no, it was just like what Grums was saying there. That kind of like sounded like Japanese work culture a little bit, where you want to look busy and spend all the hours of the day there, without actually doing all that much. You just have to
part of the problem.
busy.
Part of the problem is if a company has obviously hired too many people, then actually doing your work makes it bad for everybody. Everyone has to fill the amount of time that's available for having been overpopulated.
Well, that's exactly what Grums was getting at, I think.
Yeah, I think
and this is a generational thing. I'm noticing this among the last two upcoming generations, where they don't want to do the work. They don't want to work. They want to be as lazy as fucking possible, get paid doing so, and they think it's a win, right? Like they don't understand. Like they don't even they're not even.
I've not encountered people like that.
I'm not saying all of them. There's a large percentage, because this is one of the things I was talking about before. I don't know if you remember me telling the story, but I've heard several like it, where there's this really nice local Italian pizza place, does authentic food and all this other stuff, but he can't find anybody to work, so he's only open so many hours a week, because none of these kids want to do dishes. They think they can come in and just be a manager and not have to do anything.
I did encounter that later on.
They don't understand hard work and what it means to actually work your way to the top.
Yeah. I mean, I did hire one person who came in and said, okay, I want to take 2 weeks off before I start. And I said, just keep on taking the weeks off.
Yeah.
Yeah, did he take the hint?
Yeah, he got mad. He went, what? But I need 2 weeks off because I wasn't doing anything before, and now I got this job, and I need to just get my head together. I said, just keep taking the weeks off. So yeah, I did get quite a lot of that, but that was with a new generation of people. My oldsters, they were all great.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. There's a generational gap.
Here.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a generational gap there where, at least from my generation, it feels like we still have this, you work your butt off, you will get somewhere mentality. The generation below me and my kids' generation, they're the ones that it's like this participation trophy generation. Everybody's supposed to be equal. And like Grums was saying, like it makes other people look bad if somebody actually does their job. It's like, that's not how this world should work. It should be the other way around. It's like, that should make all these other people notice, hey, maybe we don't need all this dead fucking weight. Right? Like, because that's another thing is like, why is it that a lot of these people are just that dead fucking weight? And I think Hollywood's starting to realize that. I know the gaming industry will probably figure it out quicker because they seem to move faster because they have to, even though the games take longer. I mean, look at the reactions that Grums and others are getting out of a lot of these folks. It's because they're scared. They're freaking out because they know that the next few years are going to be hell for them, because all these games that are coming out are going to be more of this shit that we see on screen right here. Because as we all know, it takes so long for these games to come together. And when you got Sweet Baby Inc. all over it and all these other companies, what do you expect?
I blame management, because you shouldn't be hiring people you don't need. And then the people that you do have, you need to be able to properly manage them. You know what? I don't blame 100% of the argument on the foot soldiers.
No, I agree with you there. And that's been a problem with Warner Brothers, the studio in general, for the last 20, 30 years before Zaslav came into the picture, from what I know. And that was just that it was just chaos and a bunch of kids spending money without any sense of responsibility whatsoever.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 AM Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe and join us.